Okay, welcome back. And I'm sorry about the extra music there. Mike McGill trying to get a hold of Mike, and he's not answering. So I really want to get him connected this first hour. The stock market went over 30,000 for the first time in history. An interesting story, White House reporters befuddled by brief Trump statement today on the market hitting 30,000, which is pretty strange. Some people are saying it has to do with the allegedly incoming unelected Biden administration and how the military-industrial complex is drooling for war and profits, which is always the case. Here, White House reporters were left befuddled by President Donald Trump's brief statement about the stock market this afternoon, with one remarking afterward it was weird as S-H-I-T. Okay, now here, let me just play this for you. All right, this is the president. See if, I think there's a hot mic here, and you'll hear these alleged journalists talking.
And most importantly, I want to congratulate the people of our country, because there are no people like you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Mr. President, sir, why not concede for the good of the country? Sir, why not concede for the good of the country, sir?
Not expected.
That was weird. That's one of the stranger rooms.
Well, there you go. Another astute intellectual observation by a very hostile press. You wonder why he makes an announcement and then just gracefully walks off. Thank you, and goes away. All right, that's what happens. All right, so due to the, I don't know where Mike is. I talked to him earlier, I think today. He should be there. We're going to play last night's first hour until I can get him with Donald Jeffries. So hang on and listen. It was an excellent hour last night. Donald is a very astute individual. Okay, here it comes. And Rudy was no longer number one. And I think we have an ego issue here. It wouldn't surprise me. I don't think it would surprise you either. And that's why they wanted to separate a little bit between the two. And that's fine. She's got all the material, she said. Sidney Powell is nobody's slouch. This woman is an author, a great writer, terrific federal prosecutor, and is not going to be turned away by any mechanism short of, I guess, charging her and jailing her. She's going after this. And so are the others, and that's great. Rudy had a major news conference today, and I guess he felt like there was no one else in his way now. Sidney Powell is pretty much out of the news right now, but I expect her to be back when she begins filing her own formal lawsuits, and I think that's coming. This thing is so blatantly clear, and that report from One American News on the background of this Dominion Smartmatic crisis that goes back to Hugo Chavez, as Sidney said, and she was correct, she was the first to say it, is incredibly important, and yet the mainstream media, we know the game, they're not going to talk about it much unless they absolutely have to. Mike Adams reported today, here's his headline, Treason, Georgia Governor Kemp and California Governor Newsom bought off by China in COVID supplies kickback and money laundering schemes. And that's exactly what Sidney Powell said when she implied that Georgia Governor Kemp might well be involved. And I think she said it was $100 million that was spent on Dominion and Smartmatic, and that every dollar, I think she said this, is very close to it anyway. She said every dollar should be traced. You bet. Let's find out. Full accountability, right? These are honorable governors, right? Well, let's find out where all that money went. And if even $5,000 went into gruesome Newsom's wallet or Kemp's purse or whatever he uses, you never know these days, that's a crime. It's a federal crime. Federal felony kickbacks. Donald Jeffries is with us tonight. He's here every Monday to weigh in on all of this really despicable lying that is nonstop lying. It never stops now. Hello, Don. Welcome back.
Hey, Jeff. How you doing? Yeah, it's a lot of excitement going on. I'm glad you talked about Sidney Powell because I'm sure you caught it. I think this seemed to have started last week when Tucker Carlson kind of had an on-air rift with her, if you remember. He said that he had offered to have her on even for the entire hour if he could. And I wasn't sure what he was saying by to see the evidence. I mean, to me, people keep telling me evidence. I don't know what you're looking for because clearly if evidence is in the eye of the beholder in terms of this, because you're going to have to deal with, at this stage, anecdotal accounts and eyewitness testimony, and they're just dismissing all that out of hand.
Beyond that, lawyers do not tip their cards.
Right.
They hold them close. They chest their cards. They keep their evidence. This is for the courts, right? It's not for the public.
Yeah, and I was surprised to see Tucker Carlson do that because he should know better. I was kind of taken aback because I watch him and I think I'm favorably disposed towards him. I think he's the best thing on TV right now, but I wasn't sure what was going on with that. And then they kind of went back and forth. One was rude to the other, and then today this comes out about she's not part of the team. And you're right, it was handled. It wasn't handled well at all because clearly whether she technically is a part of the team.
It's
Rudy
irrelevant.
Giuliani Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis were standing right up there next with her. They certainly looked like a team. And
of course it was a team. Come on, everybody knows it. She's just not being paid by the RNC. That's the only real difference. She's on her own dime, as I understand it. Look, everything she said, she was the one who said, Georgia, I'm going to blow Georgia up first. Kemp, she said, she asked for an accounting of the money, and she should. That's correct.
Right.
Too much money.
And I think that maybe they didn't like her kind of because the tweet about blowing things up and it's going to be epic was very Trumpian, and Trump I'm sure probably liked it, I guess, but
or he was jealous of it. Look, she came in and stole the spotlight. Let's be honest. Yeah. She was refreshing. It wasn't the same old Rudy Giuliani. It was somebody new who wasn't afraid to speak her mind and tell it like it is. And I found her to be one of the most refreshing political figures to come along in a long time.
Well, I think they would be much far better served to have her and Lynn Wood, especially, who I love. I think Lynn Wood is Perry Mason Jr. Those are the guys I would be having front and center. Rudy Giuliani would be gone if it was me. I mean, I don't understand the attraction for him anyhow, but that nonsense last week when he was sweating and his hair dye or whatever it's I mean, that's just a horrible look, and it just gives fodder to the people that want to make fun of this anyhow. I mean, I don't understand what was going on, but I don't know how you can sweat like that unless, he's got a heart disease or something. But
unless you're Richard Nixon.
Well, yeah, it's true. Yeah, and you look at, Richard Nixon just by doing that. People suspected him because you just do. If you see somebody sweating like that, you think they're at the very least
bad messaging. Bad.
Yeah. So I mean, they just look at it. Okay, Giuliani, and Giuliani epitomizes everything that's wrong about this Trump administration. He's not an outsider by anybody's, I mean, this guy was at the center of the 9/11 cover-up in New York City. So the idea that he's going to be now, rooting out corruption is ridiculous. And
it's totally ridiculous. It's the fix is in. Yes. If we were being honestly addressed by Sidney Powell as the leader of the team, or certainly an equal member, I'd feel far more confident than I do.
Yes, exactly. And I think they should, not distance it, but this is Trump. I mean, Trump makes these kind of stupid decisions all the time. So, but I've been debating this today, on social media like I do all the time, and it just, I don't have much confidence. I mean, I really admire the fact Sidney Powell especially is so confident. And they all appear confident.
She gave confidence to 73 million Americans who voted for Trump.
Yeah, so I hope that I hope she sees something I don't, because as I keep trying to tell people, I know, there's obviously there's tons of fraud here. The system is rigged, but the problem is to prove it. And when they say prove it, I don't know what they mean, because they're not going to accept any proof you give, because they're the ones that have to analyze it. The people that are part of the corrupt process are not going to admit that they are involved in this, and that includes the courts, that includes the kept media, that includes all the political leaders that benefit from this nonsense. So they're not going to, this has worked very, what did the, Chico Escuela used to say on Saturday Night Live? It's been very, very good. This system has been very, very good to them, for a long time. They incumbents get reelected by a 96% clip every election. And I hope that's not by the American people actually doing that. I hope that's at least a little assistance for voter fraud. I'd like to think they have more sense than continually putting these clowns back in office. But so they're not. You have to. Just look at all the people that are indicted in this. And what we're seeing, what the postal workers are talking about, what the poll workers are talking about, are corruption at that level of people working in post offices, people working like in the Detroit and Philadelphia areas, people that are working those polls. Those are not, high up officials. These are people at that level that are doing things that are, suppressing the vote or changing the vote or throwing votes away. Just mafia-style corruption. And last week we talked about Skinny Joey, and I posted about it on Facebook, and Facebook informed me that this was not true. So even though they had the quotes from the guy, it was a Buffalo Chronicle, I guess for whatever reason they can't accept, no, it can't be true. But there's so much out there. There's so much smoke. There has to be fire. But the problem is, there are blazes
everywhere. But when you get into a court with an Obama judge, what do you have? You've got a brick wall. Okay? Yep. And now this Pennsylvania decision has gone to the appellate court, third, I believe, and that has a conservative chief justice of that appellate court. So we'll see what happens there. And from there, we go right to the Supreme Court, I guess. But there are many cases that are going to need to be adjudicated by the Supreme Court, any one of which the court could say, this election is too corrupt. It cannot stand. And if the court doesn't do that, we know the court is compromised and controlled by the international elitists that are doing all of this.
Yeah, and that's what I would. I would be surprised if they didn't do that, because again, they would have to have the guts to do that, and especially the right in this country, the conservatives have never been known for their courage at that level. The mainstream conservatives, that's why they call them the stupid party. That's why a lot of us call them cuck-servatives, because they just don't have any backbone. And do they really want to be the most vilified group ever? And that's what would happen, because again, the media will all be against them. They will be parodied on Saturday Night Live and the late night talk shows. Do they want that? I can only imagine what that's like. I talked to Linda Tripp when I was writing Hidden History, and she went through something like that back in the day when you were vilified like that and made fun of, and have John Goodman portray you. Your kids have to watch that, and she told me about how, what her kids went through with the friends, like making fun of them. That's horrible to do that to someone. So I can imagine. I'd like to think I was be courageous.
Okay, I think we're back now, and as promised, we did our best. Mike McGill is standing by and has some lame excuse about car problem. You ever heard that one before, friends? Oh, I had a car breakdown and couldn't get there on time. Sorry, honey, my car broke down on the way home last night. I had to spend the night at a friend's house. There's that one, too. Anyway, I told you to buy a place in downtown Portland. Right down in the middle, and then you'd always have no problem. You could walk to work.
One of the condos down the Pearl District that are completely boarded up, entire city blocks. They got about 30 blocks of boarded up condos down there because the kids are throwing rocks through the windows.
Those are not kids. Those are communists.
Kids.
No.
They're communists. Yeah. They're communist kids. Exactly.
It's true. It's true. Now, here's the big story. The stock market goes through 30,000 for the first time ever. Yes. And I'm reading some commentaries that are, I think, very astute. And one gentleman said, maybe it's two, at least one person said he thinks people are now thinking Biden is going to ascend to the Oval Office and we're going to war, and that's great news for the stock market, which always makes money in war, as a military-industrial complex. How does that figure? Because, look, we both know the stock market, when you examine reality, has no business being anywhere near 30,000. Shouldn't even be at 15,000. No. It's crazy. So what's your take on it?
You agree. Well, first of all, I agree with you entirely, Jeff. And I, again, apologize to your listeners here. We had a major issue working on land up in the mountains, and we had to get down to where we call, and we had a little issue, and we apologize.
Sorry.
I just saw a moment ago that the Amazon is trading like 101 to 101. The price earnings ratio is 101 to 1 right now. And it used to be a lot higher, but it's coming down because to make it so much money. Yeah. So, and again, we have companies like Tesla. Tesla is one of our $500 billion valuation. That's more than equivalency of about 7 other car companies combined in the world. I mean, this is completely crazy. But to keep going this year, they had 2 offerings of stock for a total of about $5 billion, and they're still continuing to hemorrhage cash continuously. That's all they can do because they're not making money. So
what is this? Is this black magic? Is this some kind of voodoo? What is it? That's bizarre.
Well, another thing that we kept saying also, that if you take out the top 9 to 12 or 10 techie stocks out of the S&P 500, right. The S&P 500 is negative for the year. So we have just a handful
there's reality.
Of power stocks
that's very interesting.
Carrying this market. And what we have here, I just noticed it. I'm reading an article tonight before this afternoon that in the old days, all the pension funds in the United States, and they're mega thousands of pension funds. Every city has a pension fund. Every state has pension funds for all their employees. But it's not just that. They have like the school teachers' pension funds or the City of Portland Police pension fund and the Pyre pension fund. Well, right. Where are they putting their money? In the old days, when bonds paid, like a 10-year treasury paid 6, 7, 8%, well, that would be fine. You just bought a 10-year treasuries or 30-year treasuries, and then you could use that income to easily, or not necessarily easily, but pretty well cover your pension costs. But when interest rates drop down to 0.5% on the 10-year treasury and 1.25%, 1.5% for the 30-year treasury, then what are these pension plans to do? They have no other choice other than to start taking chances. And what they've been doing is pouring hundreds of billions of dollars, giving it to hedge funds, companies that the big traders, Dalio and these guys, that attempt to promise that they will make them higher rate of returns than they can normally buy by trading in stocks and bonds, supposedly because of their expertise. Although a lot of hedge funds have done terrible this year. I read this one, I forget the name right now, is down is lost $2.5 billion since the summertime. Right. And these hedge funds, they charge 20% of the annual profit plus 2% of the total money invested annually. So after 20 years, you're going to lose 40% off the fund at 2% a year, no matter what of the overall fund. Whether they make money or not, if you lose money, they still charge you 2% of the total money under management, plus they charge 20%. So all this so-called hot money is suddenly pouring into the stock market, and the big impetus all started Monday before last when Pfizer announced that they had a quick cure vaccine. It was going to be distributed, mandatory, and everything would be solved. Everybody be cured, and the economy back to work. The stock market went up. The Dow, I think, went up the greatest single day in history, 1,400, I think, and 85 points, and closed up 900 almost for the day. The NASDAQ went totally crazy. S&P went up 185 points. I can't even remember. It was insane. And gold got immediately crushed to $105, the greatest single-day loss of gold in history. That was Monday before last, because people started thinking, oh, we'll get all back to work. It's going to be great. Everything will be lovely. This is all the psychological interpretation by people who trade in markets, all these, all the Robin Hood traders and all the hotshot guys and all the investment banks. Then at that point in time, gold has sold up another $50 down to $1,800. And then, of course, the stock market has gone absolutely crazy. And, of course, then Moderna and a couple other companies said, we'll have vaccines out real quick, too. Don't worry about it. You'll all be real vaccinated. Everybody will be healthy. And it's all really great. Well,
it's all lies. It's all lies. Nobody wants it.
Yes.
Nobody wants it. People are beginning to intuitively sense now that they've been conned from the beginning. This whole thing has been an exercise in global fear porn, and it is despicable. One other note about Tesla, and this is kind of interesting. Tesla has trouble with its vehicles. We've seen how many stories about somebody's on auto.
There's another one I saw today. The whole top is blew off the top of a car and crashed into a bunch of people.
That's right. Here's another one. 159,000 Teslas are at risk of infotainment system and cameras dying due to worn-out memory chips. Now, you'd think that they'd be able to figure something like that out, right? Tesla owners could also be in for worn-out NAND memory chips, causing a whole host of other problems with some Tesla cars. So my suggestion is contact General Motors and buy that magnificent 350 GMC V8, Chevy V8, put V8 engines in the cars, and quit playing games with these old battery things. It's stupid.
I think probably the greatest juxtaposition of this insanity that you had a lovely photograph, I believe, was on your site the last day or so. Out in the rural areas, somewhere like maybe in Nevada, whatever. It's a charging station.
Oh yeah, it's electric car charging station.
Being fueled by diesel generators. I went, this is perfect. That's another. I know that says it all. In other words,
we're not ready for it. The technology is not ready for us. They jumped in with that Prius from Toyota, and if you read up on that, the warranty on the batteries was essentially designed to expire just before the batteries expired. So you'd be hit with another $20,000 or something to replace the batteries in the damn car.
Yeah.
It's not the right time. We'd be better off pursuing hydrogen-fueled cars. We know that can happen. Anyway, this whole thing, I don't understand Tesla at all. I don't get it.
They have it. It doesn't make any sense. But the agenda 2021 and then of course agenda 2030 for the United Nations. Here in Portland, they just voted 6-7 tax measures. The city is in disarray. On the weekend, even after Biden won, they had a fake riot in downtown Portland.
Uncertified. Mm-hmm. He didn't win yet. Not until the Supreme Court sings.
I agree with that. Well, I'm saying the liberals say he won. I misspoke.
Oh, tomorrow morning, by the way.
I did Hillary Clinton. I misspoke, but I did it actually accidentally.
All right, tomorrow morning, Mike. In case you don't, hold on. In case you don't know, tomorrow morning, that remarkable Sidney Powell is going to file her first major salvo against Dominion in and perhaps including the state of Georgia tomorrow morning.
Yes.
That according to Lynn Wood. And he said the opposition will scream, don't believe anything they say at all. He said this is a remarkable piece of litigation. We'll see you in the morning. Go ahead.
We will. I certainly hope so. But here, like in Portland, on Saturday night, in the very nice and always is a nice little neighborhood called the Hollywood neighborhood. It's in northeast Portland, not too far from downtown. The major boulevard, Sandy Boulevard, runs right into downtown Portland. It's on Sandy, at about 42 blocks east of the Willamette River, which dissects the city from north to south.
Right.
They had a fake rally to bring the police out in downtown Portland again, but that was just a diversion, and a whole bunch of Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and assorted other complete insane communist freaks started walking all through the Hollywood district, knocking out hundreds and hundreds of windows, very expensive windows, in commercial built real estate, including Trader Joe's and 4 or 5 banks. They broke almost every single window in it. And for people who don't know remodeling, those windows are extremely expensive, maybe 30 times what to buy a regular replacement piece of like window glass, because they're all insulated, but more importantly, they're all tensile strengths.
It's called tempered glass.
Tempered glass, precisely, and they cost about 8 or 9 fold over standard insulated windows, and especially the big one. And as the size gets bigger, a lot of these are full floor to ceiling, 14, 15 foot tall windows.
Right.
They broke out at least 35 or 40 businesses, and not just one window. They broke them all.
This is Bolshevism. This is unleashed communist Zionist Bolshevism.
Yeah, it's exactly
these people
what it is.
These people should be dealt with immediately. All of them.
They should be. I think what is going to happen eventually, it may never happen in Portland because the people here are so virtue-signalingly stupid and fear-bound, although I'm starting to hear rumors they're getting very tired of this. Well, you think so? Maybe now you're getting tired of it? How long has it been going on for years? But in any case, and of course in smaller communities, I think I've mentioned your show before, and if I haven't, I'll do it again. Out here in the Northwest, in Oregon and Washington, or in Klamath Falls, and right here in our county where we live in, and up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and up in the Okanagan area of Washington, between Spokane and Seattle.
Sure.
They did some beta testing with the Black Lives Matter people and in the Antifa, and it was really they were told to leave or die. And in a couple of little towns, they didn't even tell them. They just went to work on them, and they left. Really, in a very sorry state, left. I mean, they sent them packing, if you know what I mean. So we've seen that all over. And the small communities will absolutely not stand for this because they basically are based on a rule of law, and they're not necessarily right-wing kooks or anything. They live in small communities. People respect each other, and you don't act that way in small communities. In big cities, you can get away with telling somebody, hey, some expletive in the car. Yeah, you want to get on, scream and yell at people and show insults and act weird. It happens in big cities all the time. It's just constant tension of, road rage and things that go all the time. In small communities, you do that once or twice. Somebody might be knocking on your door and say, why are you doing it? Why are you acting like that? I don't particularly care for that. I mean, really, that's really sort of happens in small communities. They police themselves in essence, if you know what I mean. So,
sure.
I think they've tried that and they've given that up. So they're going to concentrate in the big cities where there's anonymity in crowds. They can just continue to do this because there is no political will in a lot of these liberal cities to do anything about that. But getting back to the economics I'm supposed to be talking about here, one thing that Zero Hedge was reporting just a couple of days ago, and J.P. Morgan is also announcing it, and Goldman Sachs, that shorts now against the stock market, bets that the stock market is too high, whether done through options or outright borrowing shares and selling them, and to buy them back later, has reached the lowest level in the history of the New York Stock Exchange on all exchanges, the Nasdaq, the S&P, and of course the Dow. So, and also other exchanges in the world. All bets are now like this disease is going to be fixed immediately, and everybody will be back to work, and everything will be great. Well, contradicted against that has been a host of food giveaways here before Thanksgiving. One lasted 10 hours long in Dallas, Texas, and actually in Irvine, between Dallas and Fort Worth, where
a lot of hungry people.
Over 10,000 cars went through, a total of like 9 or 10 hours. And I think they gave away something like 185,000 pounds of food. people don't do that unless they don't have any money for Thanksgiving dinner. They're not going to go and stand in line for 4 or 5 hours for a turkey and a couple of cans of cranberry sauce, you know what I mean, and some stale rolls, unless they don't have it. And the walk-in traffic in the big cities, New York, Philadelphia, and things, they are just going crazy. Lack of food. The world, one of the institutions of the United Nations, and I forget which one it is, but it deals with food distribution. And of course, you can take that source as it may, because everything in that institution, a lot of it is tainted, obviously for obvious reasons. Your listeners will know. But even they are calling out there could be a shortage of food by the end of 2021. I mean, like completely not have it. Not like people just on a limited diet. Like no food for about 1.2 billion people on this planet. The production lines have been hurt. The lower population has no income. You can see it like in the city of Portland where we live. I had to go pick up some legal papers last week downtown. A buddy of mine took 2 days to get into our office building. It's boarded shut up 2.5 stories. Why 2.5 stories on a 25-story building? Because the fools are using 6-foot slingshots to shoot chunks of concrete through the windows of this entire city block office building that we have our offices in. So it's completely boarded shut.
You really are on the edge of having no law and order in Portland. You know that.
Yeah,
it's right. It's right. It's paper thin, the margin. There's not much left.
The only thing that's going to stop it is going to be massive vigilante resistance against this, where people are probably, regrettably, can be severely hurt or killed. That's the only thing, apparently, that these crazy, and some of them are paid, but a lot of them are not paid, individuals.
They're bottom feeders. They're happy to join up. Yeah.
They're happy to join any kind of party. They're going to be happy to join no matter what. They enjoy that.
Right.
And so, I mean, in other words, the real economy of the United States is in the world is horrendous shape. Just horrendous.
Well, wait a minute, Mike. That can't be true. The stock market just hit an all-time high today of 30,000. How can we have a bad economy?
I'm not trying to just talk about my city, but it's a glaring example. Commercial real estate mortgage bonds are completely worthless, and we're looking at possibly as much nationwide of North America. Certainly, if we bring in Europe, of over $2 trillion of non-performing commercial real estate loans. In the city of Portland, the first, and it's the bellwether shopping center for the city, was close in East Side. It was a lovely place called Lloyd Center. It was the first one built in Portland. It was built, I think it began about 1957 or 58. It opened. It's been remodeled several times and closed, and very nice. Right. And their last anchor tenant left that, closed down. They're done on December 1st as Macy's, and it's by far the biggest facility. Nordstrom's left last year. So, and there just is no employment for people.
And they're not coming back
Anywhere. They're not coming back. Where are all these people going to work? In downtown Portland, not just downtown, but now moving out into the wealthy high-rise condo markets surrounding downtown, all the shops, banks, bars, restaurants are boarded shut. It's way where I was down there about 8 weeks ago, and it was like maybe double what it was in 2 months. There was literally no activity, not even a coffee shop, not even people on the little coffee, we call kiosks that sell stuff on the street.
Sure.
They're closed. Why? There's nobody there to buy anything. All the owners of 2 or 3 of the major it's not a major hotel chain, but it's a boutique, very expensive hotel chain. One of the owners' girlfriend ran for the Senate here election about 4 or 5 years ago,
right,
and lost, of course, dramatically. But he picked her up as kind of a trophy girlfriend. She's actually a surgeon, and and they own various of these very, very expensive, $400 or $500 a night boutique hotels, like in Seattle, San Francisco, and in Portland. All of those are closed. They're completely closed. They have no income at all.
So let's talk about commercial real estate. Now, all these businesses failing and the owners of the buildings no longer getting rent or lease payments, how much of this can Portland stand? How much of this can the downtown stand before these buildings eventually are abandoned or bought by communist China?
Yeah, well, that's exactly true. And amazingly, in our last election, the city of Portland voted in 7 tax measures that are stunning. One of them is more tax on wealthy people and corporations, especially any manufacturing concern got hit. They're going to hit them with $60 to $70 million a year on carbon taxes to help do clean air projects in the city of Portland. What clean air projects? What would that be? Well, actually, it'll just be dumped into the general fund and spent on BS. Right now, the state of Oregon just had they had just out of their consciousness, out of good conscience, they felt so bad about racially discriminated African American people in the state, and we don't have very many in the state. But nevertheless, they decided they would just make a special taxation and a fee, take it right out of the general fund, set aside about $62 million to do reparation for African American. And of course, they've been sued by 2 or 3 entities already. A lot of them in Eastern Oregon. Of course, the judges immediately trashed the lawsuit because the entire judicial system in this state and in many states is completely corrupted and owned. Also, we're getting into areas in this country and the world, kind of like the French Revolution. The ruling classes are completely out of touch with the masses. The lower 50%, after all, these things we discussed in the last program.
This is historically the way it always works. This is just a pattern.
It always works this way. It always works this way. The famous Hindu economist that I started reading back in the early 90s, Ravi Batra, predicted that this would occur in the United States. He was a little too early in his forecast, but he called it exactly. That massive disproportionate wealth and income always leads to eventually cultural and civil decay, and then absolute disillusion and just dystopic, hell. And that's exactly what we're going into. All these governments can do is keep trying to raise taxes on the companies that are still here and on wealthy people. And what do the wealthy people in these businesses do? They look for greener pastures. And Las Vegas, I'm sure, is starting to look really good. And Reno is starting to look pretty good to some of these companies. And they go to Texas, or they leave the country. They go somewhere else. I mean, all these liberal governments can do is the only idea, the thought in their mind is to keep having spending giveaway programs and environmental programs that have substance,
exactly right.
and tax people draconianly more to raise money, because all the people in these offices and bureaucracies, they've never ever worked at a real job. They've never bucked bales of hay. They've never delivered papers. They've never washed dishes. They never drove a taxi cab. They never worked out in construction where you're demoing houses with sledgehammers. They've never done any physical work in their lives, and actually they have a disdain for that. If you get to really know them, they really do. I know a couple, and that's how they think. They just believe that they're superior. They have superior intelligence, superior wisdom, superior breeding lines, and superior life philosophies, and they're profoundly arrogant. The formula being set up here is a collapse of the American empire, and we are an empire. We're not a republic anymore. We're an empire, and really have been since probably the beginning of World War I, actually. Or since we entered World War I in 1917, in my humble opinion. So this is where we're at here. I mean, it's like we're cruising for just complete civil massive unrest here that's not going to be just swept under the rug. This is not going away, and the true economics are just incredible. Where I live, there are 2 small towns that have a population, 12, 15,000. They're completely self-sustaining, and all of them used to have very nice small retail markets, toy stores, things like that.
Sure.
And also very nice little restaurant scenes and bars and boutiques, and all tied together. And a lot of them, one especially, big tourist attraction, even in the fall, around winter especially. They they have trains that go around Mount Hood area that are, like sightseeing trains at Christmas with Santa stuff. Well, they're all closed. They're not going to run this year. I think they're bankrupt. Nobody's riding them because of the so-called deadly, plague virus here. And these stores I drove down this afternoon, or not afternoon, about noon today. I had to run across and do a little deposit work, and over there, and there's just no activity. The place, there's nobody parked in the street. I mean, it's just empty. The goal, I believe, is to destroy all small business in the world. And
that's why you're seeing the second wave of lockdowns. You're correct.
That's what they're doing. Second wave, yeah. They started trying to kill in the Northwest and even in Eastern California to crush all the small logging communities, to destroy them. And one of the theories is that we don't want people owning independent lands and having independence. We'll drive them into the cities where we can control them and corral them and control them and monitor them and tax them and all that kind of thing. And now they're going after the smaller cities and in the big cities too. The small retail markets, people's life businesses are being destroyed on an hourly, daily basis. The only thing left that can be standing is going to be Walmart, Amazon, and a couple of other large sellers. Literally, Amazon's going to have the highest profits in history. They're going completely crazy because everything is being drop shipped because nobody can go. These other places are closed. Nobody's going to go downtown. The idea of going shopping downtown, you go to have a little drink in a bar, you go have a little restaurant, Christmas shopping.
There's no socialized, shopping going on. A socialization of sorts, and no more. No, they want to take that away. Plus, they take human identity away with the face masks. I've got six. A PhD went through 18 studies showing that masks essentially don't work. I've got another 4-part series up in the news right now. Yeah. They don't work. Yeah. I just read the science. These are written by very intelligent, very astute, scientifically oriented people or scientists outright. They don't work. Lockdowns don't work. Even if the military were to enforce lockdowns, it would not stop the spread of the virus. The virus was made to do what it's doing, and that's to spread like wildfire. It's going to work its way through the entire national and global population, so let it run. We'll deal with it. Yeah. Now, the problem is they may release a truly more deadly, not 0.06, fatal percent. They'll let a really bad one loose, which will really panic people. That's probably coming. I was told there will be 2, and not a second wave 2, a second one. So watch for that. That's a possible. It's very unfortunate that this is all happening, but it was all done by design. Even the Pope, that phony, lousy globalist, the Pope, has a new book out, and in his new book, he's praising George Floyd, that criminal loser who died of a fentanyl overdose. He's praising BLM and Antifa protests and blasting anybody who protests against lockdowns. This is the Pope. He's a fraud. He always has been, but now it's right there. Yeah, he's a globalist.
Now we talk about stuff like that, and all the common people, and all the after all, your listeners should be aware that even to this day, small business in America basically employs almost as much as 70% of the population. The rest work in real large concerns. If you crush that, you're crushing 60 to 70% of the workforce permanently, forever, in the world or in the United States. Juxtapose that is a lovely article up yesterday on a really nice site that I read occasionally called The Intercept, that the major trading banks in New York are going to make basically they were going to make in fees alone for helping to distribute these CARES Act loans to their clients. Their commissions alone are going to be north of $18 billion. For just not for their other trading, just taking commissions on distributing loans that they got from the Fed and from this CARES Act from the Congress. Of course, that's all was borrowed into circulation of completely counterfeit fiat electronic credits. But what's worse than that, out of all this money, there was $640 billion. Only out of that, over $500 billion went to massive corporations like Boeing and companies that didn't even really need it. They actually made loans to very wealthy hedge funds because they technically qualified. Less than $130 billion out of the $640 billion CARES Act went to medium or small businesses. And only of independent businesses, there was only 8 or 10% that got in on, and that's being generous, got in on any of that. But all the guys that were major clients at J.P. Morgan, the Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, they got taken care of first. They got all the money. This always happens when you have these major so-called interventions by central banks in collusion with corrupt governments. All the money goes to the uber wealthy. And as we discussed in the last program, right now we have 39 people in the United States, all multi-billionaires, own more wealth than the lowest 50% of the entire population of the United States combined. Mm-hmm. This is beyond egregious, and eventually, somewhere along the line, the people are going to have to do something about this, and I hope they understand that this is probably won't. And I don't want to sound violent because I'm not anyway like that at all. But I'm saying, I wouldn't even want to partake in that. What I'm saying is, I think the ultimate outcome is going to be something that's just going to be quite unimaginable, especially if the food shelves go completely bare all the time, not just some of the time. Mm-hmm. When they start really running out and supply lines break down even more, and on, that's when we're going to see some real serious critical stuff start to happen. I don't think we're more than probably 6 or 8 months away from that again, but this time it's going to be a lot worse than when people did their super hyper shopping the first few days when they started locking things down. I'm talking on a regular basis. That's what's going to be going on, I believe. That's one of our forecasts here. I think people have to please, for your listeners, get prepared in every way you possibly can with food storage. Hopefully, protect your wealth with gold and silver. Right now, actually, it's a lovely buying time. We like to buy dips in markets. We know that ultimately all they can do is print trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions of more money, throw it into the market to try to save all the wagers and bets and largesse of the uber wealthy to try to keep this game alive. All they can do is borrow and print. That's going to become extremely inflationary. I still stand by. We'll start to see that pronounced in the next year. Exactly what month, I'm not sure, but that's coming, and that's when gold and silver are going to respond very admirably. Okay, very.
Yeah, well, there's always Mike. A lot of people would say, "Well, wait a minute. They'd respond a hell of a lot more than they're going to be allowed to if they were left alone." There is control on gold and silver. There is. Yes. So how much freedom do those markets actually have, precious metals like that?
Well, I think, one thing we've seen this year, there's been a definite bifurcation between the so-called paper markets, the futures market, and physical. And the premiums are still relatively high for gold and silver versus what they were before when this all started back here at the beginning of the year. We expect that to stay there. And then as the physical demand starts coming back in, as more and more people get concerned, and they will, that then these premiums will start to really increase. And in the final analysis, gold and silver are true serums. They're the real vaccine for bad economics. Gold is a vaccine for bad management, for bad triad for corrupt government, for criminal mismanagement of societies. Gold is the perfect vaccine for that. It cures it because it has no counterparty risk, and it is completely honest. You can't make more of it suddenly. It takes years to develop a mine. Mm-hmm. That's why it always had become gold, always and forever.
Well said. We look around and we see this concocted, contrived fear pandemic. Cops swarm Toronto barbecue for defying COVID lockdown and shut it down. Now, I don't know how you could be a cop and look yourself in the mirror, look at yourself in the mirror.
I really do that.
No, I just don't get it. And that South Dakota nurse's claims of the horrifying COVID hospital deaths, apparently
I read
a lie.
About that. That was completely fraud. It was a complete lie.
Somebody paid her. She made it up. They checked all the surrounding hospitals, all the nurses. There's no validation to it. So we're really sitting, unfortunately, on the firing line of absolute nonstop lies. And have some people died of this virus? Yeah, but only 6% of all who are alleged to have died of it, only 6% had only, reportedly, coronavirus. And we don't know if they were tested because the test they're using, the PCR test, has a 90% false positive.
Failure, false positive. Yeah.
So what do we really got here? The reason people are running to the hospitals, they get a cold, they start sniffing or coughing, get a sore throat, or they get bronchitis or something, and they run. They panic.
They're
frightened to death. That's right. Okay, that's it for tonight. And crazy night.